All right, we are here again. Hello, viewers. So we are back again. This is the Stay Can Show. For those watching us for the first time, Stay Can stands for Standing Together Against Child Abuse and Neglect. We have been talking about the topic, child abuse. During our first session, we talked about physical abuse, and then we moved on to emotional abuse, and then we moved on to neglect. For this evening, we're going to look at child sexual abuse. And we've got our panel members over here who will introduce themselves, and then we would go straight in. So we would go first of all to McCaffrey. He would introduce himself. Over to you.
Good evening to all our viewers. My name is McCaffrey W. I live in Ghana. I'm a Reverend Minister. I also work with one of the waste companies in Ghana, and I've also been associated with social work over the years. And I look forward to an educative and informative evening with you.
Thank you. And then we would move on to our sister, Ejiro.
My name is Ijiro. Thank you, Elsie. I'm a social worker, qualified social worker for 15 years, and I specialize in children and families. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, our sister. So we will be going straight in to look at child sexual abuse, and we will start off with our own Reverend McCaffrey. So what do we mean by sexual abuse, really? What do we mean by sexual abuse?
Sexual abuse just encompasses all behavior that exploits an individual's sex. But I really want us to look at the child sexual abuse in itself, because that definition is quite very different. And that says that it encompasses a wide variety of sexual behaviors, including penetration of vagina and anus, whether by the penis, finger, or any object, oral sex, touching of the breast or genital, masturbation, exposing oneself to the child, just spying or watching the child, exposing the child or involving the child in pornography, and soliciting the child to engage in any form of sexual activity. All of this encompasses child abuse, Elsie.
Wow. Child abuse. So should we come to Ejiro? Ejiro, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I just wanted to say, obviously, he's talked about what sexual abuse is. It's really an act, isn't it? A sexual act against a minor, whether the child can be fully clothed or not. It doesn't matter whether the child is fully clothed or not. So we have the different types of sexual abuse. Now, thank you, McCaffrey, that you touched on, some of it. So you will have what we call the contact. You have one-to-one contact, or you have indirect contact, sexual abuse. So non-contact sexual abuse and then contact sexual abuse. One of the contacts, obviously, McCaffrey just said, body parts, or even using subjects to rape a child or penetrate a child, or forcing the child to take part in any sexual activities. Making a child undress or touch someone else. Some of the non-contact is exposing the child, or exposing yourself, or flashing yourself when you're naked for a child to see, or making the child watch pornography, knowingly or unknowingly, is known as sexual abuse. Exposing the child to sexual acts, whatever form it might be, or making them to masturbate, as McCaffrey had just said, or forcing the child to make, view or share images or videos, of sexual activities, that to others, to their friends or not. or even online, getting the child to speak sexualized language, or getting the child to take photo of themselves when they're naked and sending it to them. All those, those kind of, non-contact sexual abuse, really, in relations to children.
Wow. Thank you. So obviously we talked about the fact that, sexual abuse, it's really about forcing or enticing a child to take part in sexual activities. And we talked about the two types, which is the contact and non-contact. And Ejiro has perfectly explained what the contact is about. And I think that the contact well explains itself. Contact means that there is a physical contact.
Yeah.
Then again, we've got the non-contact. Somebody would ask that, if the child consents to, gives consent for, to have sex, would you then class that as sexual abuse? The child, before I did what I did, before I had sex with the child, I asked the child's permission, and the child said it's okay. I told the child that, I've got, if you allow me to have sex with you, I would give you this money, maybe this amount of money. So the child said, yes, if you give me the money, then I will have sex with you. So I have given the child the money and we have had sex. The child agreed to it. Would you still say it's sexual abuse, Ejiro?
Of course, legally a child between the age of 8, under 18 years is a child. So anyone who encourages the child to have sex under 18, whether at the same age, and trying to bribe them really and consistently, encouraging them to have sex without their consent. A child doesn't have a capacity to understand the impact of sexual abuse. So most of the time, they're not even aware that this thing is abusive. So somebody gives you money and says, look, if you have sex with me, I'll give you this, I will give you this gift, I will take you out. So most children, especially those who are teenagers, young people, don't think is sexual abuse behavior. The law actually says when you're under 18 and you have somebody encourage you to have sex, even though you think that this is from your mind or this is what you are agreeing to, you don't actually have to know that it has a side effect and has serious impact in terms of your emotional well-being and your physical well-being, basically. So it's also classified as obviously sexually.
Okay, thank you for sharing your thoughts. Should we go to Reverend McCarthy? What's your thought on that? So if the person is telling you that the child consented to this act, Ejiro has shared her views, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Elsie, I absolutely agree with Ejiro. I think there's no part in this world that is really accepted as a reason or as a justification or an excuse, because like she said, the child doesn't have that capacity to take an informed decision. So you cannot just say that yes, the child agreed. For me, even you coming up to say you have this to give the child, and you are using whatever you have to manipulate the child, because the perpetrator is in a responsible position, right? And so you should know better and lead the child the right way. And it's interesting how it's not acceptable, period. I mean, even if the child, I remember there was an instance that I had to sit in one of those closed door court sessions on some of these things, and the gentleman the perpetrator was actually saying that, oh, it got to a point I even wanted to stop, but she was begging me to do it. Yes,
wow.
Even if she begs you to do it and you still do it, you have committed a crime, because the child is not in the position to take that informed decision. You, the adult or the perpetrator, you are in the position of responsibility. So you must act more responsibly. So yes, I agree with Ejiro. It's not acceptable, regardless of what the survivor or the child says.
Thank you. So meaning that by virtue of the child's age, the child is not able to make an informed decision, even if the child says yes. And that is why it is child abuse.
That's correct.
Before we go on to the next thing, I'm just wondering, if a parent is watching a movie, let's say a Nigerian movie, right, and then and then there's a lot of sexual content, and then he says that 18 plus, there's a lot of sexual content within that particular movie, or a parent is watching pornography on TV, and the child is there. One parent was asking me that, do we class that as sexual abuse? What are your thoughts, Ejiro?
Obviously, a child, as McCarthy had just rightly said, a child does not have the capacity to determine what is appropriate as a child. And legally, the law actually says any assisted behavior a child is exposed to in terms of sexual, of sexual nature, including watching pornography and abuse of that child. It's illegal. Under the Children's Act, it identified that a child who has been exposed to pornography or seen families or friends or anyone watching pornography is identified, and that is classified as abuse. And that should be referred to children's services, or someone should refer about it. Get help, ensure that there's boundaries. The adults are watching their, inappropriate, movies at home. You have to ensure that those things are taken away from the presence of that child, because it's actually classified legally as an abuse of a child.
Thank you. So it is classed as abuse. Oh, it seems there's just noise at the background. I don't know. Yeah. So then it means that when we are watching our movies and, it says that age restriction and, parental control and all that, we need to make sure that, it is age appropriate. And then if it's not age appropriate for the child, it's important that the child is not there when we are watching those movies. Because then again, we end up having problems around parental guidance. Moving on to looking at.
Before you quickly just move on, you would even realize that a lot of these satellite stations and all these TV stations, they have these parental control systems that are attached, so that even if you are not around and you set it up appropriately, it filters what kind of movies and channels that the children can really watch in your absence. So then that exposure bit is limited. Even on YouTube and all of that, the tablets and phones that our kids have, you can really actually take advantage of that. Unfortunately, most parents don't really, care about that. And so it's all, you are acting irresponsibly because your inactions is making the child being exposed to some of those things that they shouldn't see.
Okay, so meaning that there are some situations whereby a parent will not want to deliberately, abuse the child sexually, but then the parent is exposing the child to, watching these things, and the parents may not, is saying that, well, it's not really my intention. I didn't really know, or I believe that when that is the case, that we are going to have problems with parental, guidance in terms of or parental supervision, because, like Reverend McCarthy rightly said, these things do have parental control on them, and it's our job as adults to make sure that it is age appropriate for the child. Yeah. So we are moving on to looking at, in terms of who is at risk of child sexual abuse. Are there particular, categories of children who are more at risk or who are more vulnerable to child sexual abuse? And if they are, what are these? What are the groups of children or the groups of, young people who who we would say are more at risk of child sexual abuse. What are your thoughts on that? Ejiro, should we start with you?
Yeah, that's fine. So it's usually from babies up until, especially children, young children are unable to speak, are most vulnerable. Children who are disabled, who are, where verbally the communication skills are limited, are most vulnerable. Most young families who are also experiencing, especially children who are living in environments where there's neglect, where there are other issues going on like domestic violence, or neglect or other forms of abuse, usually also likely to include sexual abuse. Because those children, they're not getting all the protection they need, or they have, different kind of things going on within the family home, are susceptible to really sexual abuse. So most children who are really below 10 years old, research actually says that girls are more likely to be underage, are more likely to be sexually abused than boys. The ratio is about between 90% to 10% of boys and 90% of girls as at yesterday.
Wow. So Ejiro, are we then saying that in terms of child sexual abuse, both boys and girls are at risk, and it's not just the stereotypical view, it's just girls.
Absolutely. So yeah, most sexual abuse, most all children are at risk. Whether you're a male or female, whatever sexual orientation that you have, every child is at risk. Research is showing, currently, girls up to 90% are likely to be sexually abused, especially children who are being brought up in an environment that is hostile. Obviously, there are other issues of abuse going on or neglect going on, likely to be vulnerable. And children who are disabled, have no voice, their lack of communication and not able to ascertain and verbalize whatever is going on within their lives, basically.
Wow. So in terms of, so we are looking at those, categories of children who are more at risk. Ejiro has mentioned babies also as part of the groups who are more at risk. And let's go to Reverend McCarthy. What are your thoughts, in terms of children who may be more at risk, to child sexual abuse because of their, circumstance, situation, or who they are, or their personality? What are your thoughts?
Right. Yeah. So to add to what Ejiro has said, children who are also in foster care, I think she mentioned children who are living under neglect conditions, adopted children, stepchildren, children also who are living in war and conflict areas are also highly exposed. Children with a single parent who are coming from single parent homes or broken homes are also very highly exposed. And then also to add to what she said about children with psychological or cognitive vulnerability, parents also who have cognitive vulnerabilities or mental health, who are in alcoholism or drug dependencies, their children are also very high risk in sexual abuse matters.
Wow. And then obviously we've got the disabled children too, isn't it?
Yeah.
I am also interested, there have been cases whereby in Ghana, for instance, children who are house helps, have also been sexually abused by, sometimes the man in the house. Reverend McCarthy, have you come across or heard about such cases?
Several of them, Elsie, unfortunately, several of them, where, like you said, the husband of the house takes advantage of these kids. And usually sometimes it's not even kids, it's adults, they rape them. But of course, yes, there have been instances where also they are minors and they have unfortunately had to go through that experience. And it's so unfortunate that a lot of these things are not even reported because then the wife would want to shield the husband and avoid all those disgrace, the so-called disgrace that comes to both the husband and to them, and all of that. So they really exist, and they are very, very sad experiences. If you ever come across one, it's a very terrible thing.
Wow. And I think that, it is quite sad because, a number of these girls have been, or house helps have been, made to live with, these people because their parents or their, cannot care for them, or, they've been asked to, maybe made to live with these people because they can't support them, like, in terms of taking them to supporting their education and all that. So the child is then vulnerable. And then again, when the child's parent or the child's mom or dad, when they are made aware, I'm just wondering, what actions do they normally take? Reverend McCarthy?
Yeah, so Elsie, like you rightly put it, a lot of these kids are where they are because of economic reasons or economic factors. And a lot of the times when these things happen, the it will surprise you that most terrible instances, the parents of these children rather even go in and castigate the kids. They castigate the children that they are not well-behaved children and that they are here and they are being taken care of and they are doing all these kind of things. And they just castigate them and ask them to shut up and be quiet and do whatever they are told. Because for them, wherever the child is an answered prayer. So you just keep quiet. Once you are not dead or you are not dying, you just keep quiet and you have to suffer it. Some instances when the parents are a little enlightened and they want to take action, the perpetrators just give them money, what they call the compensation. They give them money to shut them up, to hush it, and then the case just dies. And then most of the time they take the kids back, but it's a race cycle. They take the kids back and then the kid ends up with someone else, and this is a child that has experienced this and has not received the necessary support. So a lot of things are going on in their heads and affecting them psychologically. So these things exist, and most of the time, honestly, they don't go anywhere.
Wow, which means that the child then grows up, having all these side effects, these traumas, and suffering from the trauma because no support has been given to the child when this had happened. And
Yeah, exactly. Elsie, even the system that we have, for even those of us who are literate, who are, I don't want to say sensitive, but who are sensitized and we know the issues and what to do, I'm telling you that the amount of frustration that you would have to go through, it's just untold. So for me, I'm trying to look at someone who is, say, from the outskirts, and is not literate, and the daughter has gone through something like that, and she has to go through this level of frustration to get, justice, to get redress, and get support for the child. You just have no idea. It's better just rather even just take the child to wherever and have somebody talk to the child, try to give some form of support and help. But to want to use a system, Elsie, it's very terrible.
So to want to use the system in Ghana for justice to take place, there are a number of hurdles you'd have to cross, isn't it? And
absolutely. And I won't take it from us. Ghana, we've come far. There's a lot of things that has been done and all of that, but I'm sorry, they are just not enough. It's not adequate. There's still so much more than that we can do. There's absolutely so much more that we can do. quite recently there was an experience, and if I should share with you what I had to personally go through from the hospital, seeing the doctor, and even from the police to begin with. I go to a police station and I was given the wrong forms. I go to the hospital, and then they tell me at the hospital that no, this is not the forms you have to bring. And then you have to come back to the to the police station, and I'm talking very late in the night, and then there's no doctor. You go back to the hospital, there's no doctor to attend to you, and you have to come back the next day. And I mean, and we are collecting medical evidence in these situations and all of that. So it's just something to talk about maybe some other time. But as a country, we've taken some steps, but honestly, there's so much to do. There's so much to do.
Wow. Wow. And in Ghana, I know that there's been some campaigns are going around for government to also scrap the examination fee, because the examination fee has to be paid before the matter can even be taken up. Right.
Yeah. I mean, without the examination fee, no medical officer is willing and ready to sign, those forms. But I know that there's been some NGOs have tried to put together a network of service providers, and some of these professionals, health professionals or police or whatever, who are part of these networks, they are sensitized, and out of their own free heart, they would want to support and sign without taking anything. But these are just very few. These are just very few compared to all the hospitals we have in the country. So if you end up in a situation where you go to a health center that do not have any of these people, then unfortunately you would have to pay.
And I have heard of situations whereby, because families are so poor and they can't pay the medical examination fee, they have had no choice than to drop the case. And again, apart from that, and I think that, like McCarthy said earlier on, apart from the fact that you have to cross the hurdle of paying the examination, the medical examination fee, there's that stigma there which makes people to put pressure on the family, for the family to drop the case, because they are thinking, oh, it would impact on her when she grows up, and she won't get anybody to marry and all that. Let her just keep this within the family, so that nobody will be aware, and then and then just drop the case. But the family or the parents are fighting the society in terms of the stigma and the pressure for them, so they are fighting the wider family and the society as a whole, in terms of the people wanting them to drop the case, so that the girl's image is not tarnished. And again there's that hurdle of or the barrier also of the medical fee which they have to pay. And my problem is that if the parents or the family then agree to drop this case, the perpetrator will then go again to the next person and abuse the next person, the next child, and then it goes on and on and on and on, because we are trying to then protect this perpetrator. And again, whereby the person abusing the child has paid bribe to the family, and then they have taken this bribe, then obviously the person can say that, okay, I can then go on and do it to the next child, because I can then pay the family and it won't go anywhere. And that is why, we are always advocating for families to come out and, expose these people. But then again, we do acknowledge that that is not without its own challenges, like McCarthy is saying. Here in the UK, Julia, what would you say?
In relation to so I was just going to say, in terms of obviously buttressing what's been said, awareness probably is the most important thing, especially even in the developed world. Sexual abuse is still prevalent. If I could just go back a little bit and say, happens anywhere. It doesn't matter whether you live in a very posh house, whether you have you're rich or you're poor. Sexual abuse in most cases, because we talked about obviously children who are most vulnerable, those who are experiencing neglect, and poverty. However, sexual abuse is not limited to that. It's also, it doesn't matter whether you come from a very rich family or you live in the best house or you have the best business. Children are also susceptible to abuse in that kind of environment. What I was just going to say, that awareness within the Africa setting, I think for me, awareness of the impact of sexual abuse on underage child under 18. It's a serious psychological impact on a child, on the young person who has been sexually abused. Most of them, if you see that, you hear a story of young women, mental hospital, you hear their story, you can tell that most of them has been sexually abused in their family home. You hear a story of a young girl who is into prostitution, you will find that they've had history of being sexually abused somehow, or been exposed to sexualized behavior from a very young age. So this thing has no boundaries, really. It has no boundaries. So it doesn't matter whether we're in the developing world or developed world. It's a thing that's prevalent all over the world. But I'm hoping that awareness of the impact of sexual abuse on a human being is quite serious, psychologically serious. That is about time we start talking about that more and more and more. Having awareness, telling adults the awareness of the impact, psychological impact has on an individual, even at every stage of their growth in life. And most, I don't know about, men maybe should be taught, boundaries, sexual boundaries. How do you do, especially in the developing world, in Ghana, Nigeria, whatever it says, what are the boundaries? Now, I know in most African countries, they don't have the boundaries. So, okay, oh, this person is young, I don't have to take advantage because I have money. This person is, because it's poor, from a poor family, and I have to, they have to come and work for me. I don't have to take it. So that needs to be more awareness, I think, as we're doing this kind of work and making it out there, maybe teaching the males and even the mothers, adults. So let's give people awareness of the impact of what sexual abuse actually do to people at every stage of their lives.
Thank you. So yes, sexual abuse is a criminal offense, and here in the UK, as social workers, if this comes to our attention, definitely the police will be involved to arrest the perpetrator. And again, the child would be assigned to, there'll be services, that the family would have to work with. I mean, the child would have to be involved in, and sometimes, and that includes counseling for the child. And again, obviously, parents out there, if a child, is sexually abused, in terms of the early steps or the first stages, whatever we do at the very early stages, that would include going to the hospital for testing for, making sure that STDs and all that are being tested. And yes, the child should seek support. It is a criminal offense. And yes, Ghana has got, Ghana and other developing countries do have their own peculiar issues or challenges in terms of the justice system. And but then again, in the UK, we also find out that because of the cultural element, which includes the stigma and all that, a number of people do not come out to report. And then what we need to also understand is that sexual abuse has both short and long-term impact for the child, and it's important that we do take this really, really, really seriously. Thank you for those who have joined us. We've seen the comments over here. We've got Karen, we've got Kofi, we've got Mr. Pobuatin, we've got Akila. Thank you for joining us. We would be going on to look at the next bit, to look at the signs of sexual abuse. So somebody will be asking that, how do I know my child has been sexually abused? Is there anything I need to be looking out for? Or how do I know that this child, you may be a teacher, and be asking yourself, how do I know whether a child in my class has been sexually abused? What are the signs, that people need to look at? Should we go to Ejiro, please?
Yeah, so in terms of obviously the physical physical abuse, you look at, like babies or young children, is it tears in their vagina? Do they have vaginal injuries? They have, are they bedwetting, consistently having nightmares? Is it, urinary infections is very common, when consistent, urine infection. A child who is really underage, why? We need to get to the bottom of it. Are they having nightmares? Why are they having nightmares? Disturbed sleep. They feel angry or agitated sometimes, especially when they see the abuser, trying to avoid the abuser, not wanting to be in the same room as the abuser. We have to suspect something is not right. Having suicidal thoughts, or wanting to, commit suicide, or feeling very, very anxious and, and depressed, or suffering from a form of, post-traumatic disorder. Those are the things we should be looking at for. We should be looking at a child. They're bedwetting. Why are they constantly bedwetting? Do they have urine infections all the time? What is going on here? Or sometimes do they have vagina injuries? Check the vagina. If it's a baby, why is this child, what's happening to a baby who keep having, thrush all the time? That needs to be looked at in terms of, obviously, sexual. Those are the signs you look for. Or do they have sexualized behavior? Are they touching other children? Are they bringing, sexualized images to school, or sharing it with their friends, even at home? Those are the things we look at. If it's like teenagers, are they avoiding contact with the rest of the family? Are they spending a lot of time? If it's like, spending a long time online, taking photos of themselves, are they closing their bedroom? Are they not allow people to go into their bedroom? Are they open? Do they want to get involved with, family activities? So, for example, if it's a teenager who are really sexually exploited, do they have expensive clothes, expensive bags? Do they have a lot of presents? They're bringing a lot of presents home. Are they bunking school, not wanting to go into class? Those are the things, or they fall asleep in class. Those are the things we look out for, when we suspect that there's a level, something's going on here. We have to get to the bottom of, or the child is very, very withdrawn, not wanting to say much, or not talk about life, or talk about family, or even talk about friends, So those are the things we look out for when it comes to sexual abuse.
Thank you, Ejiro. We would go on to Reverend McCarthy to add his bit to it. What are the
Yeah, I think Drew touched on all of them. I'll just also add depression. I think you mentioned something about depression, right? So depression is one of the things you have to look out for. And then most of the time, also depending on the level of manipulation by the perpetrator, you would realize that the child may become very sexually conscious, and then we'll start rather dwelling into it because he or she is made to think that it's a good thing, it's okay, and then the child starts to exploit all of the sex activities and even sometimes themselves. That's where they start masturbating, because when they can't get it on and they are made to think that that feeling is okay, they want to have that feeling, they want to experience that feeling and again, and then they start touching themselves and doing all sort of things to themselves. And in some of those instances, you realize that the child starts being very private, locking themselves up, like Ejiro said, and don't want you in their space at certain times. Staying on the phone for too long, and you are not sure what they are doing. The child is trying to avoid you. All those changes in behavior should also alert you that there's something going on that you
Thank you.
need to pay
So all those
attention
changes in behavior, we need to be mindful of as parents and as caregivers. So definitely, bleeding and bruising and all that, and swelling in the genital area. And again, sometimes the child would come back home and you see that the child is struggling to walk or having difficulties in walking or sitting down. You'd have to check, and again, as we have mentioned, depression. McCarthy and Ejiro, you've mentioned depression or post-traumatic stress disorder. All these things can be, signs. And again, you mentioned about, the child not wanting to go to school or true wanting and all that, So when the child is then through wanting, not going to school or going to school but coming back home late, and we need to be really looking into it. What is actually happening to the child? And some children would also be threatened by physical contact. The moment you touch them, they become like really scared and really like we can see that what is actually happening to this child. So it's important. Obviously, sometimes there is not always a clear-cut sign that this child is being abused sexually. But then as parents and as caregivers, we need to be very observant. We need to keep an eye on the child and notice those, tiny changes in the child and be very curious. And because when we are really caught up with work and being busy and all that, we may really lose sight of all that. So yes, we need to be very curious and we need to be very observant. So moving on from that, we want to look at the effects of of child sexual abuse. The effects of child sexual abuse. What are some of the effects of child sexual abuse on the child? Ejiro, we'll start with you. What are some of the effects or impacts of child sexual abuse on the child?
I mean, from my experience over the years, as I work with a lot of young people who've experienced eating disorder, have to the extent they've become anorexia, not wanting to eat, self-harming themselves, wanting to end it all, wanting to just die because they hate themselves. They hate the way they look, they hate, how they are developing. All that becomes serious mental health difficulties. And we've talked about depression, anxiety, fear, feeling of shame, guilt, and that it's their fault, that's as we in the beginning when we started this conversation, it's like, oh, you wanted it, like the abuser making them aware that that they wanted it, and that guilt of accepting that maybe they had a role to play in it follows them for the rest of their lives if support is not given. Some of them, they use alcohol or drugs to cope with the pain, the frustration and the pain within that guilt. In fact, I had a client, years ago who says, I've got too many guilts. She had 2 children and one of them was a girl. Because she's a girl, she hated that girl. Because she didn't want a girl, she wanted 2 boys. Because she was sexually abused herself. She was so afraid of having a baby girl. So that is a serious impact of, as you grow up, even as adults, if it's not addressed, the impact will have on you as a victim of sexual abuse when you're young. Some of them cannot cope with the issue of that, the child, at a very young age, because sexual abuse is one thing research actually shows has more psychological impact as a human being on you than anything else. Someone can slap you on the face, you'll be okay, or you will overcome it. But someone sexually defiles you, it's likely to change your identity sometimes. That is the truth. And it's like, some of them are gone on to become prostitutes, because they don't love themselves. Very, very low self-esteem. I don't care about myself, I can as well. So they go on being victims of abuse, unable to form an attachment or relationship, sexual relationship with people. You see people, men or women, having different partners, they can't help themselves. You sit down and get their story. Somehow, that person has been exposed as a young person when they were growing up, either even if it's pornography, sexual behavior, even themselves are defiled. So these things have serious impact on us, even as adults, because it changes your whole personality, how you see the world, how you form a relationship, and how you care for your children. So that serious impact on psychological make us as a human being, basically.
Wow, thank you so much, Ejiro. We'll go to Reverend McCarthy. What are your thoughts in terms of the impact or effects of child sexual abuse?
Yeah, again, Ejiro is a specialist, so she's said it all. But I also want to add that the most dangerous thing in life is the things that are not seen, the things that we carry in us that nobody else sees. The injury, the hurt, the psychological trauma, the impact that these abuses have that is not seen on the face is extremely dangerous. The most dangerous impact is those that you don't see. I remember there was a time that we had to get into a situation with some couples who were having issues, and we had to come in as counselors. And the issue was that the woman was not, the wife was not willing to be sexually active at home with the husband, and this became an issue for them. Anytime the man wanted to touch her, she would just call and she would not allow it, and it went on for a while until the time that the man was tired and wanted to just forget about the marriage, and they had to come for counseling. And it was at that time that the woman spoke up and said, very, very many years ago, she was sexually abused as a teenager. And this was about more than 25 years ago. And she's carried it all the way into adulthood, and now she's married and she cannot have sex with the husband because this thing is still there. The psychological trauma is still there. And so she's associated sex with the sexual abuse. So it has a very long-term effect, and it really has to be addressed. People who experience it really, really, really need help. They must get help.
Wow, so thank you. So we realized that there is mental health, again, difficulties or disorders associated with that, and that is why like Reverend McCarthy said, sexual abuse, and again, like Ejiro said, we need to pay close attention to this kind of abuse. Obviously, any form of child abuse is serious, but then child sexual abuse is something that we need to pay an extra attention to it because of the nature of it in terms of the impact it has on the child. Yet we're talking about mental health, and as my colleagues have rightly stated, we have anxiety, depression, post-traumatic disorder. We've got, again, eating disorders, and many people would be wondering what's the link between eating disorder and mental health and sexual abuse. And obviously it's all about power and control, isn't it, when it comes to eating disorder? And then again, just like self-harm, power and control, wanting to control something, which they haven't been able to. And again, suicidal thoughts. I have come across a number of young people who have had suicidal thoughts because of low self-esteem and all that. They feel that, oh, I am not really worthy, I am worthless, and what is the point in living in this world? I am not loved, nobody really cares about me. And again, like Ejiro said, we've got issues around drug and alcohol problems. Many people would seek comfort or would try to hide this try to take drugs and alcohol with the hope that they would forget about the experience. Unfortunately, this doesn't solve the problem. And again, in terms of the impact, we are all aware of, pregnancy. We have a number of young people, and who are pregnant, unplanned pregnancy, and and imagine a girl who is 15, and then pregnant. The body is not ready for the baby. Some people would end up losing their lives altogether because, like I said, the body is not ready to have a baby. Again, we've got STDs and all that. We've got AIDS and all that, and that's all under the impact of sexual abuse. We would want to move on to look at some of the barriers to why people do not report sexual abuse, or what are some of the barriers to reporting child sexual abuse. Could we come to Reverend McCarthy, please? What are, in your experience, what have you come across? Why people find it difficult or challenging to report sexual abuse?
Elsie, thank you. I think that one of the key things that I will talk about is people are not certain or they are not sure about the form of help that is out there for them. They are not sure the form or the amount of help that they can get. People also do not know the impact of not accessing this help or not getting help for survivors of these abuse. They think it's just something that will just pass with time, but they have no idea the psychological impact that it could carry on for years. And then also the economic reasons and then the barriers that we had mentioned about the frustration in the system and then the economic challenges. Because look, here in Ghana, if your child or anybody who is abused, your first point of call is to go to the police, and then they will give you the medical form from the police to go to have the child examined. Right from there, you start bearing costs because you would have to transport that child to the hospital, regardless of what the distance is. So, if say it's an hour drive, you would have to find your means of transport to the hospital. Whatever happens there is your cost. And then you have to come back to the police with that report. It's your cost. And then in some instances, even if you know where the perpetrator is, you would have to transport the police to where the perpetrator is to have the perpetrator invited or arrested or whatever situation it may be. You would have to bear all that cost. So there's just a huge economic and barriers right there for the average Ghanaian to be able to see these things to the end. And then of course also the lack of knowledge. Things change. Look at me. I'm sensitized, but I go to the police station and I'm given a form, and I take to the hospital and I'm told that that's the wrong form because they have changed the thing. So there's a lot of also education, lack of education, that is also a barrier to some of these things. I think I will let Ejiro also add up.
Okay, thank you for that, Reverend McCarthy. Ejiro, what are your thoughts also? What would you want to add to this in terms of the barriers faced by, why people do not report?
So most of the time, a child who is being abused doesn't actually know, doesn't recognize that they're actually being sexually abused. I know what we started from the beginning. We were talking about what if they give you money for sex, They don't know, they don't have the knowledge that somebody who is touching them inappropriate, that it is wrong to touch you where you don't want to be touched. Or your classmate touching you, some of that don't know. So that's one of the barriers. Some of the barriers, because of the shame and the guilt, are made to actually a victim. Most of them are made to feel guilty. That's your fault, as I said before. God, you loved it, you wanted it, and by saying that, for them to be able to disclose, it becomes very, very difficult. And well, you rightly said, sometimes I will not be believed. Nobody will believe me. And in some cases, children are not believed. Really, that's the sad part. In some cases, there's no physical evidence. And it's very difficult for the child. The child says, okay, they don't believe, so there's no point, for me to say what is happening because nobody will believe me. And also, sometimes, you tell your parents and it's dismissed. And I think that's a frustration of many, many young people, especially in this lockdown, that, families are home, no one is saying anything, the people are not able to go out, the abuse is increasing, they have no one else to talk to. So I'm hoping, obviously, that you put a number out for the NSPCC also to make sure that children can contact the child line. They have no one to talk to, especially in this time of lockdown. They have nowhere else. They don't have a place to even talk to school or a teacher or confidence, it becomes a barrier in terms of disclosing. And I think from my experience over the years, when you talk to young people, so why didn't you say it before? I thought no one would believe me, or I didn't even know it was, sexual abuse. You become an adult and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know what was done to me or what I wasn't supposed to. I was not supposed to, because psychologically my brain was not developed enough to be exposed to it. So somebody was, asking a question about child marriage. That in the UK or all over the world, it's an abuse. Legally here, it's serious. Forced marriage from that age it's illegal in the UK, illegal in the developed world, and also really in the developing world, it's illegal to have a child marriage. You will be arrested for that, because under the Children's Act, forced marriage, a child marriage is classified as also sexual abuse. So the barrier is, if it's a cultural thing, a cultural comes in as well. It's okay, it's not abuse because my child are cultured to marry a child of 16-year-old or 14-year-old man. In the UK, it's classified as sexual abuse. That legally, that person will be arrested and be investigated, and that child will be removed or put in a place of safety in the UK here.
Thank you. Yeah, so definitely, if the child is yes, so if the child marries, I mean that in terms of the child bride, as we've got over here, Karen Caesar talking about it. Yeah, she's saying that, good evening. What about child marriages? We have heard or seen recently the rise of child bride marriages. Where can we draw the line? Since some cultures see this as a norm. Yes, child marriage is also abuse. And definitely, the law will catch up with you. It's important that we also understand the impact of, a child missing out on education, and again, the impact of this on the child's health, the child general well-being. Child early marriage is abuse. The child, instead of preparing the child for marriage, prepare the child, invest in the child's education, invest in the child's future. That is, what the priority should be. Yeah, so I mean, we're coming to an end, and as my colleagues have said, stigma plays a very big role in why people do not report. And again, we've got, we've got the stigma that's okay, that the child would grow up, the girl would grow up and not be able to get somebody to get married to, because people wouldn't want to marry somebody who has been raped. And again, there's the issue of around the family loyalty. This is a family thing. We need to keep it within the family. We don't want people to be made aware. And again, in some element, there's distrust with the police. Some people do not trust the police at all. And they'll be like, what's the point in involving the police? But I don't really trust the police. And Reverend McCarthy has rightly, informed us of the additional challenge in terms of poverty, and all that, which comes into play when it comes to child sexual abuse. And again, how cumbersome and how complex the justice system is. When you want to go through and see that the abuser or perpetrator of abuse is arrested. The hurdles we have to go through all becomes sort of a barrier to people wanting to follow it through. And again, yes, we've got the issue that about taboo, that discussing sex itself is a taboo in some cultures. You don't talk about sex. And again, in terms of children and their rights, a child is supposed to be obedient. So how many of us listen to our children? When a child comes to tell you that maybe, oh, Uncle A or Uncle B has done this to me, you are like, you are a child, keep quiet. You don't say things about your uncle. But children have no voice, and that becomes another problem or another issue in our society. A child should have a voice. A child should be listened to. When a child is closest abused, it should be taken seriously. So we are bringing this to an end, unfortunately. But in terms of the way forward, Ejiro and Rere McCarthy, in terms of the way forward, as parents or as caregivers, how do people minimize, or prevent or minimize, child abuse with their own children or people they come into contact with? What role can parents play or caregivers play to stop or prevent abuse altogether, or to reduce it as much as possible? Should we start with McCarthy, please?
Yeah, thank you. I think that, like you said, there are some few things that parents and caregivers can do that would reduce the exposure of children to sexual abuse. And the first one that I want to talk about is that parents should show interest in the day-to-day lives of their kids. Parents should really show interest, get to know what is happening in the life of the children, what happened at school, what the kind of games they played, just get to know. And when you're that close with them and you want to find out things, they will tell you. They will tell you what happened, the games they played, who did what at the bathroom, and all of that. Also, you should get to know the people in the life of these children, the kind of friends they have, their teachers, the way they speak about them, and all of that. And then also, parents should seize opportunities to talk to their children about some of these issues. They are quite difficult topics depending on which side of the world you are in. If you are in Africa, the customs and traditions, our way of life, it makes it a little difficult to talk about these things. But once a while, when there's something on the TV talking about child rights or something like that, parents should seize the opportunities to also talk about some of these, bring up these conversations, and not even just wait for them. Once a while, you can just make up a story. A parent can make up a story in these areas, and then just bring it up and kind of tease the child's mind to know what they know or what they think or what they don't know, so that you can use it as an opportunity to empower them. Also, parents should be watchful and watch out for the warning signs that we had earlier mentioned. And also, the last one I want to talk about is parents should please spend enough time with the children, spend enough time and have that special bond, because when you are close to the child and you have that special bond, it is easier for the child to tell you and to share these things that happen, so that it's easy for the child to speak up when they are experiencing these things. I think Ejiro should continue from here.
Wow, thank you. That's really helpful. So, Ejiro, yes, what can we do going forward? What would you be saying to parents and caregivers?
Can I just say that some of the adults, if you're a parent and been sexually abused before, and you've never spoken to anybody about it, it's better to talk about it. Because what I find from experience, if a parent has been sexually abused and they haven't discussed it, they don't even know that they've just carry on with their lives. Their children are likely to be sexually abused. I've seen all over again. I don't know what it is. So it's better, as McAfee said, be open about it. I was sexually abused. I know it's going to all protective behavior work. If somebody touch you in the certain ways, how are you going to react? If uncle comes, don't speak. You and uncle should not be sleeping in the same bedroom. Uncle should not be sharing a bedroom with your girls, not even with your boys anyway. It doesn't matter. It can be a boy or girl that's a victim. Don't leave your children with strangers. However, and I know in those days we used to leave our children with minders who are not registered. We must ensure that people we leave our children with are checked. Even if you can't legally check them, make sure you do an assessment yourself before you leave them. Don't allow your children to go and have a sleepover. You have not done the risk assessment. When I say risk assessment, do you know who is sleeping there? Can you be clear as a parent that when the child go and have a sleepover, your child will be awake to know who's coming in and out of that house. You don't know. So it's always going to have that open communication with our children. And as adults, if you sometimes when you're a perpetrator, there is help out there too. You see, for you to say, I have this feelings, I don't want to do this to my child. I don't want to do this to my children's friends that comes into my home. You can get help too. So it's just talking to the adults in the children's lives, especially because most abuse happens in the home. 95% of sexual abuse happens in the home. So the home is really supposed to be a safe haven. So who comes to the home? Never trust anyone, whether a woman or a man, and leave your child, with a person you don't trust. You must always ensure that person, you know them, because it could be vulnerable. And if you were a victim, it's better you talk about it now. Let it be open now so that your child don't become a victim again. It's like a generational curse, really. That when you become a victim, if you're not open about it, don't talk about it. Don't get help. Even if you don't get help, talk about it. Be open. Know that it's a wrong thing so that your own child don't become a victim itself.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. So talk about it. And then like McCarthy is also saying, have that bond with your child, that good relationship, that positive relationship, and be having those conversations. Trust the child. Don't undermine what the child is saying. Respect the child and respect what the child is saying. The child should have a voice. In most cases in our homes, most kids do not have a voice. They should have a voice. We should listen to what they say. We should respect what they say. We should place importance, to what they say. What they say should be important to us. We shouldn't just brush it off. Yes, spend time with the child. And if you have that close relationship with the child will be saying things to you because the child knows that, oh, I can always tell mommy this, I can always tell mommy this or daddy this. But when parents are so busy with their own lives, then that becomes then a problem. We've got Kweku Opoku Ajiman, who is saying that, fear of stigmatization, monetary issues, family are some of the reasons abuse are not reported. So we've got the economic reasons, we've got the, stigma again in our society in terms of, sexual abuse. And like McCarthy is saying, the stigma is also because of lack of knowledge and a lack of understanding, or lack of awareness around the impact of sexual abuse on the child. We are bringing this to an end in terms of, in terms of you as a social worker here in the UK. If a parent has got a child who the child then discloses to the mom, maybe mom or dad, that this person has abused me sexually or raped me or had sex with me, what would be your advice to the parent?
So contact the police straight away. Contact the police, contact NSPC, contact the local children services. And if you're a child watching out there, you feel that you're being sexually abused, you have no one to talk to, dial the child line. You put the child line's number on the screen. Dial the child line. There is help through NSPCC for you to get the help that you need at this point in time. You feel isolated, you have no, because there's lockdown, you have nowhere to run to, just dial the child line. And if you're an adult, you feel you suspect, whether a neighbor, a friend, a grandparent, a father, a mother, or uncle, whoever you are, suspect that a child has been forced into under marriage, under age marriage, or being sexually abused in any form or the other, contact the local children's services or just contact the police. Just contact, 111, the non-emergency number, or 999, and just report it, and they will take you from there.
Thank you, Ejiro. In terms of Reverend McCarthy, and I know we've got our own challenges, in Ghana or developing countries. But then, what would your advice be to a parent whose child, discloses that they have been, sexually abused? What would you tell the parent?
Yeah, I would say, regardless of the frustration, regardless of the challenges, the stress, please, please, please speak up. We need to speak up until actions are taken. And I also would want to stress that get help for that child. Get help for that child. Let that child overcome that thing. The child does not deserve to live with that psychological trauma. The child does not deserve to carry that weight throughout her life. Help the child. Let the child get help and let that child be free of that, so the child doesn't carry it and become abusive herself, or just have that impact her entire life. It is not right. It is not right to put people in that cage. But Elsie, if you will, there's just some 5 quick things that I want to say. If I have the time, I'll say very quickly.
Sure,
um,
sure.
I don't know, but I just have that feeling that there are people who may be watching who have themselves been once perpetrators, or if any perpetrator by chance sees this video, I want to speak with you, and I want to quote Mark chapter 9 verse 42, and the same is repeated in Matthew chapter 18 verse 6 to you. And it says specifically that whosoever shall offend one of these little ones, children, God is specifically talking about children. He said, whosoever shall offend one of these little ones who believe in me, it is better for him that a millstone were hung about his neck and he was cast into the sea. So it means that God really harbors, God detests this. You are better off dead than being alive. So if you're a perpetrator out there, please, you yourself, you need help. Go get help yourself. Say, I have this urge, I have this feeling, I don't like it, and I need help. I need help, so that you can overcome that thing. I don't know what to call it, but that thing, you must overcome it. So if you're a perpetrator out there, please go out there and get help. And Elsie, parents must understand that for children, disclosure is a process. It's not a one-time thing. It starts with a complaint or an observation. It is a process. So we need to make that time and carry the children all through this process to get every information that we need, so that we can help them the best way that we can. And like I said, Ghana, we have our challenges, but there are some few organizations that are helping. WISE is there, ARC Foundation is there, and Staken Ghana is there, right? So when you speak up, there are some organizations that can come out and
Okay, it seems we have lost.
Yeah, it's done well.
did you get me?
Yes.
Am I back on?
Yes.
Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is that it's high time we start talking about the boys. I like something
Yes.
that Drew said, that we need to draw the boundaries. We cannot just be talking about empowering the girls, and then we leave out those who grow up to become the perpetrators. You see, our education and the way we are tackling this thing is just one-sided. Let us turn to the boys, the boy child. Let us start mentoring them. Let us start educating them and teaching them and showing them that these things are wrong. These are
Yeah.
your boundaries. If you go to school and you are playing with a girl, these are your boundaries. These are things you don't do. Let us start mentoring them and inculcating that in them, so they will grow up to become responsible men. That's all I have to
Wow,
add. Thank you very
wow,
much.
wow. That is so helpful. So yes, thank you so much, Reverend McCarthy, for that. That is so helpful. We will come to Ejiro. What's your final word, Ejiro?
My final word, Reverend McCarthy has just said, to me, it's awareness, 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 awareness. Really, if there are no perpetrators, there will be no victims. So you're very right there, and that's spot on. If there are no perpetrators, there will be no victims. So the males, most males are the one who perpetrates, and we know some women do. However, having that sexual boundaries, where did that go wrong? So for me, especially in Africa, all right, so the law is not there. So we have to start teaching it from churches, where most 95% of people go to. What is the pastor preaching for the men? Say, look, you got to be responsible, because there is impact of being exposed to masturbation. There is impact can tell you psychologically, men who masturbate from a very young age, when they get married, sexual urge is limited. Pastor can testify on that. So those things we need to, let's talk about sex, because people are doing it anyway. It's not a secret. Especially in churches, let's talk about it. Let us be open about it. And say this things, everything has serious impact. It tells every areas of our lives. So I'm going to leave that awareness of the impact of underage sex on our psychic, on our psychology. So today we're going to leave the public. Say, look, always remember that whatever your eye, ears, your nose, everything that you're exposed to comes into your spirit man, and it comes out physically. So you must always be aware that when we expose children sexually, before their psychic is developed enough to know what's wrong and right, goes in forever, and it's very difficult to come out. So awareness. So those feelings can be managed. Help is out there. You're a victim or a perpetrator. Thank you.
Thank you, Ejiro, so much for this. Yes, awareness, education. We can't not emphasize this enough. We all have a duty to play. We all have a role to play when it comes to safeguarding children, keeping children safe. The fact that it is not your child doesn't mean that you should not sit down unconcerned. If it's a neighbor's child, if it's a friend's child, whoever it is, once a child is involved, we all have a role to play to keep that child safe. And that, again, like Ejiro said, whatever organization we find ourselves, whether it's in the church, whatever community, whatever group we find ourselves, let us be each other's keeper and, work together to keep that child safe. Education, awareness. So on this note, I would want to say thank you so much to Ejiro. Thank you so much to Reverend McCarthy for coming on and, discussing this. And again, thank you so much to our viewers for their participation. On this note, we say bye-bye.